While the Bretons are excellent cooks, they are also capable smiths, and just like their cuisine incorporates ingredients from faraway lands, their armors bear influence of other races. For material, the Breton blacksmiths prefer to use iron, steel, leather, and brass, gold, and silver for decoration. As free people before the arrival of the Durrani, the Needs would utilize rather primitive protection. Made from copper, leather, bone, and iron, they used this equipment for the longest of time until, in the First Era, the first knightly orders were established, along with a signature armor set. It is now known as the ancestral Breton armor. This heavy suit covered the entire body head to toe in plated armor. Sabatons, greaves, and chests were made from overlapping plates, providing maximum protection to the wearer. Gauntlets were metal on the outside but soft leather on their palm, provided dexterity to the user and prevented slips of weapon. Pauldrons were designed to deflect blows, but the armpit was still a vulnerable place. The softest spot of the armor was the neck and throat of the wearer, as they were covered by a simple cloth. Other exposed places were protected by scale mail. The helmet, on the other hand, was designed so well it still remains virtually unchanged. It covered the head but also the face, the visor being a narrow slit in the helmet. The entire suit was not only effective but also ornate, decorated with brass and motif of roots. The modern Breton armor is very similar to its predecessor. However, when they were mass-produced for the armies of High Rock, the materials and quality of craftsmanship decreased. It was obvious that this armor is to be widely available while affordable, and while smiths took pattern after the days of yore, they could only do so much. The armor of Daggerfall Covenant from the Second Era was as magnificent as it was fearsome. As the Covenant claimed to be the rightful inheritor of the Reman Empire, they stylized their armor after imperial fashion. Those features were most visible in the Baltea, still found in imperial armors to this day, and in the shape of the helmet. The helmet was closed-faced and with plumage to display the status of the knight. The whole armor was decorated with lion imagery, which was the symbol of the Covenant. Out of the many knightly orders to come out of High Rock, two were remembered most: Silver Rose and the Silver Dawn. Silver Rose was an order dedicated to fighting the Daedra, but more than anything they focused on capturing and locking away Daedric artifacts. They did, until their downfall due to the corruption by the very relics they have vaulted. Their armor had some resemblance to the traditional Breton armor, but was lighter, allowing the wearer more speed and agility. The order has worn leather trousers instead of greaves, and the forearms were also only protected by leather. The whole suit was silver and dark red in color, matching the heraldry of the order. The Silver Dawn, on the other hand, were sworn to combating the were creatures of any kind. It is no surprise that such order came to be in High Rock, a province infamous for its lycanthropes population. The armor was once again lighter than usual and consisted of segmented metal bands allowing for greater flexibility, especially in the torso and waist. Cloth and leather skirt protected the loins instead of greaves, further reducing the weight. This would be crucial for an order which would often chase down quick and nimble foes. Scale mail was worn under the main armor to protect from bites. Only face was exposed to look the danger in the eye. The members would frequently decorate themselves with pelts of defeated werewolves as a display of defeated adversary and to warn off other enemies. The style of druids and the word of High Rock is called Ifra's Will, and just as Ifra wills it, they craft the armor in peace with nature without violating it. They have spun their tunic with jute, using wood and bark to give it desired shape, and leather for reinforcement. The materials used gave the apparel hues of green and brown, allowing the wearer to camouflage seamlessly in the undergrowth, balancing the lesser protection it offered when compared to conventional armor. Also, it was a lot lighter, allowing for speed and nimbleness, even when sneaking, crucial for factions avoiding conflict. The druids residing in the Sistris also used the Ifris Will style, but the Fire Song Circle is the exception. They use skarn, a volcanic rock from the local volcano, to reinforce their armors. They use leather inlaid with the rocks to make crude yet effective armor, brittle but intimidating. Speaking of the Sisters, we should cover other styles prominent in the archipelago. There is the Sisters Guardian, worn by the watchmen and guardsmen of the Isles. One can see this style has clear origins in the Bretonic culture, but has adapted to the new tropical environment. The helmet has lost its faceplate, greaves were replaced with leather trousers, the sturdy sabatons reduced to a shin pad. Even the chest armor only covers the upper torso, the abdomen only protected by leather shirt. The smiths often use the hide of ornag, a local beast, to make leather used for hilts and inner lining of the armor pieces. The set bears the mark of a sea hawk, a symbol of the Sisters Guards. The Steadfast Society is an organization hailing from the Sisters that advocates peace and tries to prevent bloodshed. As such, they often put themselves in harm's way, earning the respect of commoners. They wear a hood and tunic over their armor as a sign of bringing aid rather than violence. The hood and tunic, not too different than the robes of a priest, are dyed into white and shades of grey. Boots and pauldrons are quite similar to the Breton variant. Even the helmet differs little from the source material. The image of a Breton knight in full armor performing noble deeds popularized the style in other provinces, and many non-Breton smiths imitated the look and function, being in a way descendants and inheritors of both the Reni and Needs. The Breton religion includes deities of both pantheons. They don't seem to care for the animosity of the gods, or the men and elves being at each other's throats in the name of faith. They worship Akatosh, Arche, Dibella, Julianos, Kinnereth, Mara, Stendar and Zenthar from the religion of men, so the traditional 8 divines. From the elven side of the roots, they worship Ifra, Stendar, Finaster, Mara and Magnus. Members of the 8 do not differ from the main imperial faith. Akatosh is the first of gods, the Lord of Time, the golden dragon of royalty. Magnus, the god of magic, is widely acknowledged by the Bretons, who have natural proclivity to conjuration and magic in general. Julianos, another scholarly deity, but a human god, oversees aspects of logic, wisdom, and pursuit of knowledge. In High Rock, his holy places, his shrines, are places of peace, meditation, and study, often acting as schools for local population. The priests of Julianos teach all who are willing to learn. Mara, one of the few deities who are the same for both men and mer. She is the mother goddess, providing example on how to look after the home hearth, widely popular patron of families, but also the symbol of fertility, prayed to by farmers and gardeners and herders. While the elves picture Mara as Oriel, Akatosh's wife, there is evidence suggesting that the earliest Bretons paired Mara with Shor or Lorcan. Perhaps this is why they welcomed the Direni in their lands, following the example of the missing god. Mara had temples built in her name in High Rock by a group called the Benevolence of Mara, a priesthood committed to the teachings of love, care and compassion. Dibella, an exclusively human goddess, oversees the aspect of beauty, desire, art and affection. In High Rock she is worshipped in action by the court affairs and love tales and conscious thought of appreciation for fine art, exquisite food, moving poetry, touching ballads, paintings, sculptures, wrought jewelry. All who create joy from mind and eyes and ears follow Dibella's bidding, knowingly or not. Jeffra is of course the centerpiece of the Druids and the word cultures. Their enclaves exist because of him and his teachings, but they are not alone in respecting the spirit of now. Some hunters and farmers pray to Jeffra as he is a god of forests, whether asking for easy prey, safe passage through his domain, or to keep the wild from encroaching on farmlands. The respect for nature is and was prevalent throughout people of High Rock, and with arrival of the elves, they have learned the name of the Green King, Ifra. Kinnereth, perhaps the human counterpart to Jeffra, is widely revered for similar reasons. Goddess of air, rain, wind and storm, often preyed to by fishermen and sailors, merchants and traders. Anyone who ventures out for journey seeks to appease Kinnereth. It is quite possible that her worship in High Rock is more so because of the residue of Nordic culture once dominant in the region rather than the empire's religion. Finaster is very much an elven deity, being an ancestor to the Reni, but not an Etada. He still left a big enough mark on the elven society to join the ranks of gods. In Breton culture, he is acknowledged and known, but very few pray or venerate him in any way. The Reni considered him their patron god, and so his fate has permeated into Breton society. Nowadays, the only recognition he gets is from Breton mages, in whom the elven blood is stronger. Zenithar is widely popular throughout High Rock, especially among the commoners, the farmhands, fishermen, weavers, shipwrights, and other labourers. At the same time, he is venerated by more rich class, the merchants, at least the ones that have not begun to worship money itself. Zenithar is the patron of work and trade, and it is no surprise that he is one of the most common gods in High Rock. Stendar is another deity present in both elven and human pantheons. In both, he is the god of compassion, mercy, charity, and patience. In such tumultuous land as High Rock, the temples of Stendar are quite common, as there are many who seek cure, help, or respite, and the Stendar's faithful provide for all, even ones who seek their end. Stendar is also the god of justice and is often favored by young knights and squires who dutifully serve their peers, provide good deeds to the public in hopes of being blessed by Stendar. Arche is a god of life and death, the cycle of rebirth. As elves, equivalent Xerxes has no tangible aspect to men, being god of lineage of elves, the Bretons worship Arche instead. His priests often work and oversee the cemeteries, graveyards, and mausoleums. They are held in high regard as they can prevent dead bodies from being resurrected as minions to a necromancer or a vampire. Lastly, we have Sheor. In Breton religion, he is the antagonist, the enemy god. He is called the Bad Man, a phantom menace lurking in the dark. The similarities in name to Nordic shore are obvious, and it is definitely the Reni's influence that changed the early Bretons' perception of their patron god. To other human races, Shor Lorcan is the god to rally behind against elves, the leader, the life-giver, the god of man. But Sheor is a twisted, villainized Shor, responsible for all hardships that befall Bretons. Bad harvest? Blame Sheor. Milk gone sour? Sheor's doing. Can't brew that fortify charisma potion before weekend? Sheor. What is interesting, however, is the existence of old idols predating the Reni, which implies Sheor was not only worshipped but also paired with Mara. Human god coupled with elven goddess. Perhaps that is why the Needs welcomed the elves among their midst. The Breton architecture draws heavily from the Reni, that is, from the Aldmer culture. That is most obvious in construction of Breton homes. Of course, despite having elven blood, the Bretons lack the long lifespans of the elves, and so cannot master the crafts as the Mer do. The carpenters and masons build without the finesse one might see in Somerset. And yet, the similarities persist throughout the centuries. But this is an average citizen's dwelling. What about the nobility? The castles, palaces, and fortifications all share one quality: durability. Built out of grey rock, those structures are as magnificent as they are strong. The Breton towns have various origins, but over time the style was streamlined across the province. This land, fractured and divided for so long, caused the city planners to surpass themselves, with the city walls being really impressive, often utilizing natural terrain to their advantage, as they did with Camlorn, situated on a hill, or Daggerfall being built on a cliff. The city's walls are tall and thick, the gatehouse being the only feasible weak point, unless you could scale these fortifications. That is, if the troops occupying the numerous wall towers and battlements wouldn't dispatch you first. The castles were just as heavily reinforced, often having many turrets to facilitate archers. It seems the Breton architects favored round towers and smaller wall towers were built square. Simply put, The Breton cities are well prepared for a siege. Two other buildings, such as inns, smithies, or manors, are usually 1 story high, with the bottom part made out of stone and the upper of wood. Dark grey roof tiles kept the buildings dry, and while the cities were quite military oriented, the residents did their best to adorn their towns with fountains, statues, trees, and lawns. Lastly, let's discuss the matter of Breton afterlife. As opposed to their cousins, who have very clearly defined their idea of a place for the honoured dead, the Bretons believe that the souls of the deceased venture to Etherius. This belief obviously originates from the Durrani, as this belief has survived in elven societies even to this day. As far their funerary customs, the Druids and earliest Needs bury their dead. This idea comes from their philosophy of being one in nature, and as Ifre giveth life, he taketh it, and the bodies return to the cycle of growth. Under Durrani influence, the Needs begun cremating their dead, an elven custom still practiced in the Altmer homeland. Eventually, Bretons have returned to the tradition of burial. Since then, the peasants can hope to be laid to rest in local burial mounds or a cairn. More well-off citizens of High Rock can expect to have a funeral in the city's cemetery, while the rich and noble may have a family crypt, but the royalty of Bretons would often possess extensive catacombs under their palaces, or could be buried in historically significant graveyard, such as Cath Berdrad. And so, our journey through the lands of High Rock comes to an end. It is land whose history, culture, and society has a second depth. At a glance, there is not much to discuss. It's quite simple, but after some exposure, a realization comes that the people living there have created a very distinct and interesting society, very much worthy of discussion.